I'm making a film at the moment about Whitney Houston. So Whitney Houston is the most superficial 1980s pop star. And it fascinates me of saying, what happens if you go deeper into this person and try to understand who they are and what they did and how they're a part of a bigger social movement that they didn't even know they were a part of, but also what psychologically made them the way they were. And in her case, what made her kill herself by taking so many drugs? What was she running away from? So that mystery is always interesting. And you don't necessarily answer them, have a key to the mystery, but also she is the most tabloid star in some ways. So there's something interesting about trying to do a serious film about an unserious life, or an unserious person. So somebody came to me, a producer came to me, two producers. One of them was Whitney Houston's agent, film agent in Hollywood. She was a big agent at William Morris. She discovered Brad Pitt. She was the agent for lots of people. Can't remember, of course, now, but lots of people. And she couldn't come to terms with the fact that Whitney had died and what had happened to her. And even though for the last 15 years of her life, this agent made no money from Whitney, she tried constantly to get her off drugs, to help her. And I thought, why? And she said, I loved her. I just loved her so much, and I could never understand why she did this to herself. And I want to make a documentary so I can understand why. And I thought that to me was like really interesting. I thought I know a lot of agents, and they're all obsessed with money and deals, and they're not interested in the people. And she was interested in the person. She's retired now, and it obviously plays on her mind. Still, why did this happen to this beautiful girl? Why did she choose to do this? And it's not an easy thing to answer. It's a complicated story.
Yeah, and it's difficult to tell, not as a tragedy. Only as a that's
yeah. Well, you're trying to also talk about, when they made the Amy film about Amy Winehouse, in a way that was an easier film to make. She was young. She wrote songs about being unhappy, about what made her unhappy, about her obsessions. So you could relate the life to the music very simply. With Whitney, it's much harder because she didn't write her own songs. She just had this incredible voice. So there's an idea which I'm trying to explore in the film, which is how do we express who we are by our voice? How do we express emotion and meaning through the sound of our voice? And I think it's a very interesting thing. As a filmmaker, when you make fiction, one of the processes you go through is you do ADR, dubbing. So there's a scene which is bad rain outside, you can't hear anything, so you have to go in and dub it. And every time I do that, I'm always amazed by how the actor who made the film 4 months ago, who shot it, is now a different person, and you can tell by their voice. And they say the same lines, but they sound different. Like, why are you different? Because they're no longer the same person they were. They're not thinking about that role, that part. They're not, and it always sounds fake. Whenever you put in ADR, it sounds fake. And maybe only the filmmakers can tell because they're listening every day to the real thing. And I think that's the question with Whitney. She's communicating when she's singing who she is in the sound of her voice. And we all, when your friend or your mother speaks to you, you can tell instantly if they're sad, if they're unhappy, if they're hiding something, if they're not. And it's those non-verbal communications that's very interesting to me. But how do you talk about that in a documentary?